Hi everyone, we're Mimicker, here to introduce all kinds of knowledge, even the stuff we didn't know about.
It's great to be back. And today, we're diving into something that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Right, it feels like something that's maybe 50 years away.
But it's not. You look at the SEC filings, the engineering white papers, this is very, very real, and it's happening like right now.
We're talking about the massive, and I mean massive, merger between SpaceX and XAI, and this isn't some boring boardroom deal.
No, not at all. This is the birth of a $1.25 trillion vertical giant with a goal that is just, it's wild.
So what is the official name for this?
They're calling it orbital computing. But, the internal code name that's been leaking out is Project Heart of the Galaxy.
Heart of the Galaxy, of course it is, because let's put servers in space just wasn't dramatic enough.
Exactly. But the name really hints at the scale. The basic idea is to send millions of AI computation nodes, so basically powerful GPU servers, and launch them into orbit.
To actually move the physical hardware of AI off the planet.
Off the planet entirely.
And that's our mission for today. We have to figure out if this is a stroke of genius that saves the tech industry, or if it's an environmental and orbital disaster just waiting to happen.
Because the first question everyone asks is why? Why go to all that trouble?
Yeah, exactly. My first thought is, space is hard. Why do this when we have plenty of land right here?
It does feel counterintuitive, doesn't it? But to get the why, you have to understand the physical wall that the AI industry is running into on the ground.
Okay, so this is about the power grid, right? I was looking at the reports you sent over, and the projections for 2030 are a bit terrifying.
They're completely unsustainable. I mean, you look at projections from Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, global AI power demand is set to jump by 160% by 2030.
That's not just more computers.
No. That's a fundamental change in how we use electricity.
And I saw that stat about Virginia. I had no idea it was the data center capital of the world.
They call it Data Center Alley. And right now, in that one state, data centers are already using over 25% of the entire power supply.
A quarter of the state's grid for one industry? Wow.
And we're not talking about, plugging in a laptop. The hardware reality is just immense.
We're talking about those new NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs.
The B200s. These things are absolute monsters. A single one of those chips pulls about 1,000 watts.
1,000 watts. That's like running a microwave oven on full blast. 247 just for one little square of silicon.
Precisely. Now picture a cluster of 100,000 of them. The startup surge, that instantaneous demand when they all turn on at once, it's enough to crash the power grid of a medium-sized city.
And it's not just the power, is it? It's the water. People forget the cloud is made of physical boxes that get incredibly hot.
Massively hot. And here on Earth, the most common way to cool them is with evaporation cooling. You're basically sweating the heat away.
Which needs millions of tons of fresh water.
Which puts ChatGPT in direct competition with, say, farmers. Or, drinking water. In a world with droughts, that's a political nightmare.
So the whole argument for Heart of the Galaxy is Earth is full, the grid is tapped out, the water is getting scarce. If you want to scale AI by 100 or 1,000 times, you literally have to leave.
That's it. You have to find an environment where those constraints don't exist, where the physics actually starts to work in your favor.
Which brings us to space and this idea of a solar advantage. I'm assuming we're not running giant extension cords up there.
No extension cords.
Sure.
See, solar power in space is a completely different ballgame. Down here, solar's great, but it has one huge flaw. Night. Plus clouds, atmosphere, dust. The load factor, how often it's actually making peak power, is only about 24%.
So 3/4 of the time, your solar panels are just expensive roof tiles.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But up there, in what's called a dawn-dusk sun-synchronous orbit, or SSO, everything changes.
Okay, break that down for me. Dawn-dusk SSO.
Imagine a satellite that basically flies along the Terminator line on Earth. The line between day and night. It's always riding the sunset.
So it never goes into the Earth's shadow?
Never. You get nearly 24-hour sunlight, no clouds, no atmosphere, and the solar intensity is about 40% higher than on the ground.
So your load factor goes from 24%
to over 95%. But here's the real kicker, the huge money saver. You don't need batteries.
Oh, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. Because it's never night, you don't need to store any power.
Exactly. On Earth, a solar farm needs a huge, heavy, expensive field of chemical batteries. In orbit, the sun never sets on your server. You strip out tons of weight, which makes the satellite much, much cheaper to launch.
Okay, so you've got infinite clean power. Sounds perfect, but I'm stuck on the cooling. We just said these things get incredibly hot.
Space is cold, right? Like minus 270 Celsius.
It's very, very cold.
So why is cooling a problem at all?
This is the cooling paradox.
Yeah.
Trips a lot of people up. Yes, space is cold, but it's also a vacuum. And a vacuum is the best insulator there is.
Like in a thermos flask. Exactly like a thermos. It keeps your coffee hot because there's nothing for the heat to travel through. On Earth, we blow air or pump water to move heat away. In space, there is no air. There's no water.
So if you turn on a 1,000-watt chip in a vacuum...
It just cooks itself, melts in seconds. The heat has nowhere to go.
So how do they solve this? What's left if you can't use fans or water?
You have to use the third form of heat transfer, radiation. Just letting the heat radiate away as infrared light.
I vaguely remember this from physics class. It's based on the Stefan Boltzmann law.
That's the one. And without getting lost in the math, the takeaway is simple. Heat radiation is proportional to temperature to the fourth power.
Meaning the hotter something gets, the way better it is at radiating heat away.
Exponentially better. But to make it work, you need a ton of surface area. You need these huge radiator wings.
So the satellites will look kind of like TIE fighters?
A little bit, yeah. The math shows that to cool one single NVIDIA B200 chip, you need between 1.2 and 2 square meters of radiator surface.
That's a lot of wing for one chip.
It's huge. But think about it. Water cooling has pumps and seals and fans that all break. These radiators, they're just solid chunks of metal. They're passive. Once they're up there, they just work.
So it's bulky, but it's super reliable.
Exactly. It's a much more elegant system once you solve the geometry.
Okay. So power is solved. Cooling is solved. But space isn't just a vacuum. It's a shooting gallery. I'm talking about radiation.
And this is probably the biggest technical hurdle. High-energy protons, electrons, all trapped in Earth's magnetic field.
And these things can wreak havoc on a computer, can't they?
Big time. They cause what are called single-event upsets, or SEUs. A particle just punches through the silicon and flips a bit from a 0 to a 1.
So your AI model suddenly has a major glitch, or the whole thing just crashes?
Usually it just crashes. Now, traditionally, NASA gets around this with rad-hardened chips. They're super shielded, but they're ancient. The Mars rover runs on a chip that's about as powerful as a 1998 iMac.
You can't run a modern AI on that.
No way. You need the cutting-edge stuff. So Musk's plan is risky. He's using COTS hardware commercial off the shelf. The same chips you'd find in a data center on the ground.
That seems insane. How will they survive?
They know they're going to get hit. So the strategy is to manage the errors, not prevent them. They use something called triple modular redundancy, TMR.
Triple. So 3 chips doing the same thing.
3 processors doing the exact same calculation at the exact same time. Then they vote on the answer.
Ah, I see. A voting system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If chip A says 4 and chip B says 4, but chip C got hit by a particle and says banana, the system just ignores C, resets it, and moves on.
That is really clever. You waste a bit of processing power on redundancy, but you get to use the latest, fastest chips.
Plus, the new NVIDIA chips have a built-in RAS engine. It can actually predict when a part of the chip is about to fail and just digitally wall it off.
Have they actually tested this in space?
They have. We've got hard data from Google's Project Suncatcher and StarCloud-1. They flew NVIDIA H100s, and they survived 15 kilorads of radiation.
And is that a lot?
It's way more than they'd need for a typical 5-year mission. Turns out modern chips are so tiny, the particles have a harder time hitting anything critical.
Okay, the hardware survives. But what about lag? Space is far away. If the server I'm talking to is flying over the Pacific, isn't there going to be a huge delay?
You'd think so. But here's where the physics gets weirdly in your favor again. It's all about the speed of light.
Which is constant, right?
In a vacuum, yes, but not in glass. The internet runs on fiber optic cables, and the glass slows light down by about 35%.
I never knew that. So fiber is actually slow.
Slower than a vacuum, yes. In space, they use laser inter-satellite links. The data zips between satellites as a laser beam.
So the signal hops between satellites in a vacuum, moving 35% faster than it could in a cable on the ocean floor.
Exactly. For a data packet going from London to New York, it can actually be faster to go up to orbit across the lasers and back down again.
That is wild.
And the bandwidth on the new Starlink V3 satellites is aiming for 1 terabit per second. But the real goal here isn't just moving data, it's edge computing. What does that mean in this context?
Okay, think of a satellite watching for forest fires. The old way is to stream terabytes of video down to Earth for a computer to analyze.
Right. Huge bandwidth.
With orbital computing, the AI is on the satellite, it watches the video in space, and when it sees a fire, it just sends a tiny text message down. Fire at these coordinates. You cut your data use by 90%.
Which would be a game changer for military intelligence or disaster response.
Just turns the whole network into a real-time global brain.
Okay, I'm starting to get convinced on the tech side. But what about the money? This has to be astronomically expensive.
It used to be. The entire plan, the entire business model hinges on one thing.
Starship.
The big shiny rocket. If Starship V3 hits its cost targets, we're talking about $200 per kilogram to low Earth orbit.
$200. That's cheaper than shipping some furniture. It completely shatters the old economic model. At that price, a satellite server becomes a disposable good.
So instead of building one perfect billion-dollar satellite,
You build thousands of cheap ones. If one breaks, you don't even try to fix it. You just let it burn up in the atmosphere and launch a replacement. It becomes a consumable.
the consumable satellite, that's a huge mental shift. But putting a million disposable things in orbit sounds incredibly dangerous.
And now we get to the risks. This is where the engineers really start to sweat.
We have, what, 15,000 active satellites up there now? And Musk's plan is for
1 million.
a million.
We'll
That's
go.
so crowded. I'm thinking of Kessler syndrome.
The absolute nightmare scenario. Imagine a car crash, but the wreckage keeps moving at 17,000 miles per hour. That shrapnel hits other cars, creating more shrapnel, which hits more cars.
A chain reaction.
A collision cascade that turns low Earth orbit into a permanent, deadly debris field. It would trap us on Earth. No more launches, no more GPS, no more weather satellites. We'd be stuck.
Does SpaceX have a plan for that?
They have a collision avoidance system called Stargaze. But managing a million objects at those speeds, it's chaos theory. One software bug, one solar flare, and the whole thing could go wrong.
And even if they don't crash, what about burning them up? You said they're disposable. That can't be good for the atmosphere.
It's not. When a satellite burns up, it vaporizes and releases aluminum oxide, alumina, into the upper atmosphere.
What does that do?
The scary part is we don't fully know. But models suggest it could damage the ozone layer and even change how reflective the Earth is to sunlight.
And then there's the light pollution.
Oh, astronomers are absolutely furious. A million bright, moving dots in the sky. It could effectively end ground-based astronomy. We could lose our view of the universe.
That seems like a very heady price to pay.
It is.
So before we finish, there's one last piece. It's not physics, it's lawyers. The legal gray zones.
This part is fascinating. Space isn't a country. So if your data is on a server 300 miles up, whose laws apply?
It's the ultimate offshore data haven.
Exactly. The old Outer Space Treaty says the launching nation has jurisdiction. The U.S. Cloud Act says American companies must hand over data no matter where it is.
But I'm sure companies are looking at this as a way to get around things like Europe's GDPR or California's privacy laws.
Of course they are. It literally exists outside of any nation's borders. And the geopolitical side is heating up. China has already announced their own competing space cloud,
They can't let the U.S. have a monopoly on the orbital brain.
which leads to militarization. In a future conflict, these orbital data centers are massive strategic targets. You don't need to launch a cyber attack, you launch an ASAT, an anti-satellite weapon, and just blow it up.
And that just brings us right back to the Kessler syndrome problem.
It's a vicious cycle.
So if we pull all this together, what's the big picture?
I think we're seeing a transition on the Kardashev scale.
That's the one that measures how advanced a civilization is, right?
Yeah. A Type I civilization harnesses its planet's energy. A Type II harnesses its stars. By moving our most energy-hungry industry intelligence itself off-world to directly tap the sun, we are, in a way, taking a tiny first step toward becoming a stellar civilization.
The physics works, the chips seem to work, the economics if Starship delivers works.
But the hurdles are all legal, environmental, and, frankly, about safety. We can do it. The question is, can we manage it responsibly?
And I'll leave you with a provocative thought. We all talk about data privacy, but are you comfortable with your personal data, your photos, your emails, your AI assistant being processed on a server floating in an international vacuum? It's hovering right over your head, but it's completely outside the borders of your country. Who do you even call when something goes wrong?
A true cloud, in every sense of the word,
Okay.
and maybe just a little too far out of reach.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell.